And hello, everybody, again. This is Del K. Brereton, and this is The Real Spiel. Coming with us today is our brother. We've been speaking for a long time via the chat, but never in real life. And so we've had some phone conversations, but this is, as he said, as he's written it out there, Herman Joseph Rome, HJR.
Yes,
What's up, brother?
yes.
Tell the
Cool.
people who you are, man.
All right. Well, I'm Herman Joseph Rome. I have a lot of nicknames. If you like to come up with one that you think of, that's totally okay as long as it's respectful.
Mm,
Um, I'm a young person in Chicago. I guess middle age now. I just turned 35. I'll be 36 at the end of the year. A couple of my mentors in the past have told me that 35 means you're officially middle aged, so I'm embracing that. And I'm just generally a person with a passion for change that sees a lot of opportunities for change in ways that we can approach it that can maybe be more effective than some of the things that we've been doing thus far. So I'm here because of that. And I interacted with your content because you were someone initially I ran into your content speaking about Kanye and Kyrie. And oddly enough, those are just two of my favorite celebrities, so to speak. I'm not much one for celebrity following, but I enjoy when people are passionate about their art forms, and those are two people that I particularly draw inspiration from. So I interacted with you through that, and I've been here ever since.
man, and I'll say this too. Your comments are the most insightful and in depth comments.
Oh, thank you.
That yeah,
Thank you. I try.
you've written some stuff for it. It forced me to read it. Like I had to read it. Like I said, this is too deep. I got to read this stuff. Like so, I said, man, this is a great brother to sit and have a conversation with, and to maybe even have a show with. And this is how we're here right now, everybody. So just good morning to everybody. I see you, Al the Spice Man, Miss Ann, to all the Cyclopses that are in the building. God bless
Hello,
everybody.
everyone.
Yes, I walk with lions. Here's the names of some of these folks, guys. Miss Glenda, good to see. All praises to the Most High. Amen. And grace and peace to everybody. Listen, we're going to talk about some stuff today. We're winging it a little bit because this is our first kick at it, and
Mhm.
let's just see where it goes. It's 12. It's 11:12 now, meaning it's 10:12 in Chicago.
Yes.
Uh, and so let's give ourselves a half an hour to give the people what they want. Sister Yvonne, good to see you. Brian Holmes, good day to everybody. Listen, tell me about the riverboat people, man. Tell me about the riverboat brawl.
All right.
I
So,
saw it on
admittedly, I'm
Instagram.
kind of late to the party with the riverboat, but I saw this morning there was some fisticuffs that took place in Alabama because apparently, reading the backstory, there was a security employee for the riverboat that were pulling up to dock, but there was another smaller passenger boat that was sitting in the way of them being able to dock. One of the employees, one of the security guys, jumped off of the riverboat, engaged the people with the personal boat, and initially I understand it was respectful, but it escalated, obviously, as we can tell by the video. So yeah, it looks like there was, voices were raised, and then at some point, one of the people from the passenger boat got a little aggressive. Maybe they had been drinking on the boat. I can only speculate. He goes and shoves the security guy, and from there, melee ensued. His friends joined in. It was essentially they were kind of jumping the guy, and then just people who happened to be around, just good Samaritans, said, "Hey, we're not going to allow this to happen." Random strangers started jumping in and defending him. One man swam across a river to
Mhm.
join the fracas, and he got busy when he got over there. He swam over there for a purpose.
Like
And
Aquaman.
yeah, like Aquaman, he was like two or three superheroes in one, and he rock bottomed the guy. It was incredible. um, and yeah, it was just really, one of those things that you, I mean, maybe sometimes you go to places and you see inappropriate things take place, but generally you don't leave the house expecting to see something like that. Kind of a once in a lifetime kind of thing. But people are commenting and giving their input and kind of, sending encouragement and, you know, their praise to the people that helped assist, because ultimately it's one of those things where we speak about community and defending the helpless. And when you see something like that happen, the guy's just kind of trying to do his job. It becomes really unfortunate when people, take advantage of that and even commit violence, but the people around kind of stepped up and did their thing.
It's important to note too. Well, Brother Al says the man was 65 years old. And it's a black man, and he was confronted with multiple white individuals who seemingly didn't care that this gentleman was either elderly or by himself. And while I was watching, I saw a couple of people who were first actively, definitely assaulting him. And then there was a third gentleman, and for those who watch the video, he's wearing a gray t-shirt, and he's apparently, for some reason I was captivated by him. And I was captivated by him because he didn't actively jump in at first. He was definitely part of the people in the private boat. And he ultimately held down the black gentleman while they were on top of him, hitting him. Now, he didn't hit him. He didn't initially jump him, but he held him down. And this is like a social commentary that there can be individuals who sit there and they say, well, I'm not actively racist. I'm not actively doing things negative to the black community. I'm not actively against marginalized people. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I'm not trying to make anybody feel disenfranchised. I never oppressed anybody. I've never owned slaves. Like all these kind of conversations that we have. But were you complicit in holding a group of individuals down, or not allowing them to get back up, or not helping them get back up? And so he caught my attention. He caught my attention the most because as an ex-cop, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, when this video goes out, the police are going to be thinking, okay, who do we charge? Oh, you hit him. You hit him. Okay, you're standing there not doing anything. Let me watch what you're doing. Oh, but you ultimately just held him down. So this guy's going to go to court and say, well, I didn't hit him. I didn't do anything.
You participated, though. You were an accessory.
Absolutely. And when the Super Friends came, the black people from all over the place came.
Right. And a couple white people, I think, as well, in fairness.
To be honest with you, I don't know if the white people were the people who were on the other boat and just didn't want the fight to continue, or if they were actively individuals who said, let me stop. Because to me, there's a difference between somebody's trying to hurt you and you're like, stop, stop, stop. And what the black folks came and did and said, who are you trying to? And they were giving it right back. Right?
Yeah,
so I saw
like immediately kind of became a coalition. Like, we know what time it is. like that guy swam like he had been waiting for that moment his whole life.
That's whole life.
It's funny,
he came to rescue his people. Tanya Thomas says, I don't see the media referring to the white attackers as uncivilized thugs. Yeah.
And just for reference, I can't see the live chat, so you have to kind of pull me in on what people are saying. But with that being said, something that you pointed out to me that's just generally interesting human phenomena is the kind of energy of mob mentality. People won't necessarily do things if left to their own devices, but when you're around people who will do things, you'll join in, whether good or bad. It could be something positive, it could be something negative, but we just have this thing within us where we have to kind of go with the group in many ways because it's a survival instinct. If you back in the, in primitive times, if you went against the group, you can be ostracized or physically harmed, and it's still kind of a thing now. So yeah, not to make excuses, but just to kind of look at a deeper level of the things that come into play when these sort of situations happen.
Did you ever see the movie? I'm not going to remember the name 100%. Cornbread, Earl, and something else. It's a movie from the 70s.
Okay.
Where Lawrence.
I'm not familiar, but I'm listening.
Check. I want you guys to check this movie. I'm gonna get the name of it. Somebody help me out. Cornbread, Earl, and Me, I think it's called. And Cornbread was actually Jamal Wilkes from the LA Lakers. He was playing a guy in the movie named Cornbread. and he was this standout basketball player. Everybody knew Cornbread was going big time. The people, Lawrence Fishburne, Cornbread was his idol in this movie, and Lawrence is a child. Cornbread, Earl, and me. That's right. And in the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but in the movie, Cornbread gets killed by the police. He's just right. They're having a bet about how fast Cornbread can dribble the ball and run home, and Cornbread says, "I can do it in 25 seconds." The police are looking for somebody simultaneously at the same time, and they mistake Cornbread, who is running with a basketball, for the person who committed the crime, and they kill Cornbread. Right. When they shoot Cornbread, black people like Lawrence Fishburne start screaming out, which makes the movie famous. They killed Cornbread! They killed Cornbread! And he's screaming down the place. They killed him and he didn't do nothing. They killed Cornbread. This is what made Lawrence Fishburne famous, right? And black people come from all over the place and start attacking the police. This is what this river brawl reminds me of, right? Where this 65-year-old man is Cornbread, and they're like, you ain't killing Cornbread on my watch. No, they killed Cornbread in 1975, but they're not killing Cornbread today. That's what it looked like to me.
Indeed. And I think that's becoming more of a thing, because these conversations, just like literally you and I connecting, is just an extension of, we saw something happening to someone within our community and we galvanized the troops and banded together. And there was so much dialogue and conversation that happened within those initial posts, and even still now, because obviously you have a consistent following of people who are still here now. But it's a thing. Also, just random aside, one of my best friends in life is nicknamed Cornbread. His name is Daryl Townsend. We ran track and field together. I've known him since the 6th grade. So the Cornbread thing is really funny. He got that nickname in high school running track. He used to race people. Fortunately, he's still alive and a father, so that's a positive spin. But it is a thing. Our ability to communicate makes it harder for people to kind of obfuscate and infiltrate, because that's a real thing. And one of the things that I'd like to touch on maybe in future conversations is about how we constantly hear the pull yourself up by the bootstraps trope, and people implying that maybe we aren't doing enough. But when you look at the entirety of our history during and after slavery, we've done everything that anyone could possibly suggest, from literally not being allowed to read to within 50 years or so after slavery having a literacy rate over 90%. So we did it. We had the skills and the trades because we were doing all of the work. We had our own businesses. We had our own communities that were torn down by terrorism, by domestic terrorism. We tried to, what's the word? Losing my words right now, but we tried to join communities and desegregate, rather. We tried to desegregate, that's what I was trying to think of. And you had white flight, that was the birth of the suburbs, you had redlining, you had all of these things. Like, we can't really win for losing. We had our own, like they talk about the gang violence. I'm right now in just west of Chicago in suburban Oak Park, but I've in and out of the city, lived in the city, families from the city kind of thing. And one of those things you hear now is, well, what about Chicago? When you talk about politics and Democrats versus Republicans, whatever. But if you think about Chicago, I went to the same high school as Fred Hampton, Proviso East High School in Maywood, Illinois. And people don't tell these stories, but you had a group of young people who, at the age of 18, 19, 20 years old, the same age as a lot of these drill rappers that get criticized, had formed their own kind of civilian militia and activism group, had organized gang truces within the city of Chicago that's notorious for violence. Since then, and even prior to that, with your organized crime, your Al Capones and those kind of guys, they managed to form a gang truce, a multiracial coalition. So you had people from everywhere. Humboldt Park in Chicago is notorious for having a large Puerto Rican residency. They got the people from over there. They got the Mexican gangs. They got the west side, the south side, and they created truces. In addition to that, had free breakfast programs. Now, this is the youth being active. They created this, and what happened? They got infiltrated. They got murdered by the police. They got railroaded and framed for different crimes that they didn't commit and labeled as terrorists. So literally everything that people say, well, you should do this, we've done it. We've tried it.
You know,
And I think that's an important part of the conversation, and ultimately why we deserve reparations. But that's a different conversation as well.
oh yeah, and the reparations for us just gets bigger and bigger. I've said it many times. It's more than money now. It's literally nationhood. But just to piggyback on what you said, white organized criminals become institutions.
Yes.
So the white organized gangster, what did he become? He became unions.
Mm-hmm.
He became the Teamsters.
Police officers, they became all sorts of things.
So what they do now is they institutionalize their let's use their word, their organization that is outside of maybe the legal framework of the time. Because remember, when unions came about, they were the worst things ever. And then when unions got into place, they were like, how dare you not belong to one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now in the Black community, our unity, forget about being a union, an institution, but our unity is even dangerous to the status quo.
It always has been.
Always has been. So when you see a scenario, and I'm going to piggyback on Tanya Thomas's comment with this, when you see a scenario that is like this, folks are like, some white folks don't always know what to think. It is mind-blowing to me that their white privilege had them thinking that they could attack this man and other Blacks would not come to help. Are we known to stand by and not protect our own? The answer to that question is yes, we are known to do that. That's the answer to that question. But known is a past tense. What are we doing now? We're moving in a completely different direction, right? Tulsa, Oklahoma was enough for Black people to have a civil war. Tulsa was sufficient for civil war. George Floyd was sufficient for armed insurrection. To watch institutions lean on our necks in the 21st century and kill us in effigy on camera, that was enough. So, the fact that this George, what's his name? George Smith, what's his name? The one who killed the little Black boy. He's still walking the streets. Help us, everybody. He's still walking.
Zimmerman, George Zimmerman.
The fact that George Zimmerman, and I gotta be careful because we're on YouTube, because I'm not trying to incite anybody to do anything to anyone, but it is very interesting that this guy is still walking the streets freely, that he is still a public figure that doesn't have to hide in America, right? That he's almost got celebrity status. And apparently I heard he tried to shoot somebody else. I don't know. So it's interesting how our unity, thank God it goes viral, but it doesn't become, it's still dangerous to some. It's still mind-blowing to some. I'm happy I saw, and for people to add to this, I saw the police having some of those white guys sitting in handcuffs afterward. But I did see a brother with a chair smacking a whole bunch of people on the head.
I missed the chair. I was trying to find the chair. I couldn't find the chair footage.
Woo! He took out a lady. He took out a bunch of people with that chair, and the cops had to hold him.
Okay.
Derek Chauvin. Yes, Derek Chauvin. The Derek Chauvins of the world. The Derek Chauvins of the world don't have to hide, right? A terrorist, a real terrorist, an Osama bin Laden terrorist, has to hide when he's not white. When he's white, he can go to get another job. When he's white, he can walk down the street. He can live in his neighborhood. He's a good neighbor, right? When he's white, his GoFundMe, Derek Chauvin's GoFundMe was in the millions of dollars, right?
That's wild. I'd say even additionally to that, though, who is your victim? Because some white people get held to justice a lot of times, but it depends on who their victim is. If it's against one of their own, then it's just like person versus person. But one of the fundamental pillars of the United States of America, and this has to get brought to my attention, is the ability to acquire and accrue wealth based on free labor, particularly by Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was constantly a thing. And I've, again, just recently in the past year or two, gotten educated about how basically they say slavery ended 1865, but that just isn't reality. Just for more context, my father, also named Herman, was born in Mississippi on a plantation. I didn't know he was born on a plantation until a few years ago.
Who,
My
your
grandmother,
father?
yes, my father, in
Okay.
1956, was born on a plantation in
Yeah, and just
Mississippi Delta.
because people say crazy stuff, you're not saying your father was a slave. You're saying he was born on
No,
a
not a
plantation.
slave, but I'm going to explain
Exactly.
because literally
Right.
speaking, not by definition of the law a slave, but here's what they did. They had sharecropping, which was basically slavery by a different name, right? So
Mhm.
we don't allow you to own any property. You're just basically lost people in a new land because we had to learn a new language. We lost all of our language, lost all of our culture. So we're basically subject to, in every sense of the word, we get what's given to us. So, all right, we'll give you job opportunities and you'll work on our property. And at the end of the season, we'll tabulate and see what you've been able to earn. And if it offsets what you owe us, because you have to pay us to be able to, it's like being a vendor of sorts, right? If you
Right.
vend at an event, you pay to have a booth or a table. So you pay us in order to be able to work here, and you can pay off your debts. And once you pay them off, then you're free to go. But guess what happened? It was never enough, obviously. It's because, again, we were still gaining literacy, and a lot of people were kept away from literacy because it's still a thing. If you're in a place that it doesn't have the best education system, or you don't have people who have the time and ability to invest in your education, you just kind of do what you can to get by. So this was pretty much everything in the South. There were some people who got out, but largely speaking, there were plantations who were run and operated by racist owners who made it their business to make sure that their labor force wasn't educated, didn't have the ability to advocate for themselves. They also created black codes. So again, slavery is illegal unless you're in prison, in short. So if we come up with a bunch of pseudo crimes, we can throw you in jail, and now we can legally make you a slave. So slavery was abolished,
Or unless
technically
you're a
speaking.
legal alien too. If you're a legal alien, slavery
Right.
is legal too. Go ahead.
Right. They have these contingencies in which they can kind of, they can play fast and loose with people's freedom. And again, so basically what they were able to do is we lose slaves, which was this free labor source. We were treated like cattle. How can we replace it and call it a different name? So they did that through your sharecropping and so forth. But here's what happened. Technology, the same way we're able to connect now directly and see these things and react to them, we had technological advances. When you have TV, you can't get away with just terrorizing black people like you did in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or the whole Red Summer of 1919, because it wasn't just one event. It was a whole summer of just terrorism that people don't know about. But so now we see you fire hosing little girls. We can't support that because the human mind reacts to visual more than they do to statistics, data, first person narratives. When we see it, it feels different. So what do we do now? We disincentivize you from staying together in the home. We break apart that structure, and we come up with more crimes and throw you in jail, and we still have our free labor force. And that's basically what it's been the entire time. It's all about keeping us as the free labor force. It's not, the business model isn't designed for us to be free and liberated.
And I think what keeps us as free labor force too, and this is the scary thing for us, is that we are participant in becoming the icon or the idol that keeps the machine moving. So basically, we just got to make one of these Negroes famous, and the rest of them will follow and still make us money. Because while they think they're supporting him, they're actually buying our products. They're actually supporting our businesses. They're actually facilitating our distribution channels, right? Same thing. But you know what we see though
Absolutely.
in Montgomery, Alabama, they will let a brother be a riverboat security guard and get his butt whooped. And but black people
Absolutely.
said to that situation, you know what? We're not going to allow you to attack this. And this is what I love. This is what I love about it. And I'm sorry, I try to extrapolate things to make it so I would say significant on a larger level. When those people saw, when those black people saw that black man, that stranger to them, simply getting attacked, they responded to me with just a call to order. It was a representation to me of years of just atrocity that black people said, I am not going to let, I don't know who that man is, but I'm not going to let those guys do that.
Well,
And it's go ahead.
I'll say it reminds me of something my dad used to say. This was in the 90s and early 2000s. He was from Mississippi. Corporal punishment was a thing. But he used to, kids can be mischievous, and I used to maybe get in trouble, but he couldn't quite pin it on me. I was able to get away with it enough. You know what I mean? Just being
Right.
a kid or whatever. And he would say, I know you did it, but I can't prove it. So when I catch you, I'm going to get you for this time and the last time. And this is what it felt like. Like, oh, we catch these videos when we see it and we feel away, but obviously we're removed from it. We can't do anything. We hear these stories about, and we see the results of these things from all of these people losing their lives innocently, and we feel away. So people riot, or they protest, or they comment, or they boycott. But this was one of those times where it felt like, oh, we know what this is, and we're not letting it happen. We got you red-handed.
Yep. And it's amazing too, because I was worried about. I was like, well, how are the police now going to treat the black people that came to rescue him? That's what I was concerned about. I was
That's
like,
an interesting question. From a
yeah,
litigation standpoint, like, what does that constitute?
Yeah, who's going to become who's the martyr, who's the victim? Because we know that white people can go from aggressor to victim in a wink of a proverbial judicial eye, right? Depending on what cop shows up to the scene, they can go very quickly to, oh, we were attacked by all these black people. They just rushed us. This mob of blacks, attacked us because we were having a conversation. And it can turn into that. It can devolve into that because the police don't show up with video, right? And depends who calls the police first, right? They don't show up with context. They just show up and see what they see and respond by their own training and by their own bias and by what they were told.
That's something I want to pick your brain more on as someone with law enforcement experience. That's a unique perspective where you can give some insight that maybe a lot of us within our community don't have, and frankly are in fear of or resentful of. So having you as someone with that experience, I think, is a good asset.
Well, and I'm thankful for that too. I just want to say one thing here. I'm going to make a comment. One made a statement that the place, Riverboat, Harriet's name on it, they said that was the place they sold ancestors. I don't know. I know we know the relevance of Montgomery, but
yes.
I don't know the relevance of that particular area in respect to Harriet Tubman. But if that's the case, that's extremely significant. As a police officer, you show up with your bias first. You do. I don't care how well you're trained, because I had a predisposition as a policeman that I was hired to represent my community. I wasn't hired to capture them. I'm not a slave catcher, right? My job is to show community policing to my community. So when I pulled over a black man who was going, 20 kilometers or 20 miles, I'll use American terminology, over the speed limit, it's my position now to be community to him and say, bro, slow down, you can go. As opposed to making an example of him. It was my position to walk into black barbershops in black so-called hoods and say, in my uniform, say, can I get a haircut? taking pictures with members of the community. I took a picture in a black barbershop, left my picture on the wall. Apparently, a white officer came into the barbershop and said, I need to take that picture. The barbers called me right away and said, what's going on? They said, this white guy walked in here and said he needs to take the picture, a white cop. I said, give me a few minutes. And I said, what was he, a Metro cop? Like I asked what division. I called back. I called the station. I say, hey, why are your guys in there harassing my people? I said, I need that picture back in 10 minutes. And he came back and he put it back, right back where he left it. And many times brothers would get, our community is our community. We get into trouble. Brother would show my card. He was arrested for such and such and he gave your card. Yeah. What's the problem? Well, why do you know him? Because he's a black man in my community. Why wouldn't I know him? Why is it a problem? Don't you give your people cards? Don't you give your people your name if they're ever in trouble? So don't create some kind of new narrative now, because I represent my community. And so a policeman shows up with his bias, right? He also shows up with what he's been told, right? So I think prospectively, when I saw a bunch of white officers arrest a bunch of white people, I said, these guys showed up with what they were told. They were told that these white guys were the aggressors. They were told that they attacked this gentleman, and they must have been given that information first and strongly in order to have all those white people sitting there in handcuffs. That's me looking at that thinking, whoa, it's very interesting that all these white guys are sitting on the ground in handcuffs, and I don't see no brothers in handcuffs. But I was happy for it. I was very happy.
Indeed, indeed. And it was so clearly them being the aggressors. It was so clearly one person being outnumbered, obviously being an employee with countless people around to verify it verbally and with video evidence. So it's almost like they couldn't get away with just going off impulse. But again, it's still interesting to see how it's going to be pursued in, the courtroom. Because I saw additional videos of people who were just, at that point, it just kind of turned into a big thing. So people who weren't involved with either boat, the riverboat or the passenger boat, were just kind of into it at that point. And that'll be, a whole different conversation as well. But I hope for nothing else, the people who initiated it get something on their criminal record that doesn't come off easy.
Exactly. I like what this statement says. It says, in one of the many videos shared, one woman is heard saying, and that's for slavery. Take that one for slavery. For once we felt that we gave them back what we had to endure for centuries. And this is the, if I was a white person, living in my either privilege or living just trying to mind my business and do my thing, and I don't have a so-called racist bone in my body, I would be terrified of this statement, because this statement is, I would be sitting in my house whispering, how long are we not going to give these people back their dignity, their reparations? How long do we think we're going to get away with this? Do you see what they did to those whites at the riverboat? Like, sooner or later, the consciousness of black people, this is an example. The collective consciousness of us is going to sit up and say, why in the heck are we still here? No. Let's call a meeting, because this isn't going to happen anymore. That's what happened there. They're like, we don't know who that man is. We don't know what he did to you. All we know is we're not going to stand here and let you beat on him. And guess what? We're not going to walk over there peaceful. We're going to give you back everything that we see you given and more. And we're not going to we're going to give it to the women. We're going to give it to the men. We're going to give it to the old and the young. We're going to give it to everybody. Right? Because I saw some ladies getting knocked out.
Oh, yeah. I saw some ladies kicking. So, I mean, I saw one lady, I think she was in a blue shirt or something, got her little nudge in with her foot. And, so if you participate at that point, anyone who decides to participate becomes fair game. I hope no one innocent got harmed. But if you jump in, especially in something that heinous where there's clearly one person being outnumbered, and you decide Because again, she wouldn't have done that on the regular. She wouldn't have just one-on-one faced that man, but she saw, hey, I see an opportunity to get a shot in on a vulnerable person. So you doubly deserve it in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I would like to figure out the background of who this gentleman was. I'd like to know who he is. Again, it's not relevant because he is simply he's simply a representation of injustice. It doesn't matter who he is, really. It's this is the yeah. I don't want to get into the kind like I remember the Candace Owens narrative on George Floyd was George Floyd is not a hero. He's this and he's that and he's done this and he has a criminal record and he has this and he has that and why are you black people making it? And white people were sitting there saying, "Go Candace, go get him, go get him for us." And the point was, it wasn't about his history. It wasn't about his record. It wasn't about his reputation. It wasn't about what he did 20 minutes even from that moment. It was the fact that everything that he did in his past did not qualify him to be killed by being kneeled on his throat. Nothing he did qualified.
Indeed.
For that.
If you want to hold them accountable for things in the past, then do that then. But it's moving the goalpost. You don't have to qualify yourself to be treated fairly and with dignity and justly. Like, so it's just kind of a way to obfuscate. It's a way to try and justify something that isn't justifiable, and that's nasty. That's nasty business to me.
And we do it worse than everyone else. Andrea J says, white men were also punching black women in the face, right? Regardless of that situation, because we've seen black men punch black women in the face, and we've seen their black sons get up and shoot their behind dead. We've seen that take place too, right? So, the point of the matter is, a man should not be punching a woman, black nor white, period. But going back to the Candace Owens commentary, we are the worst at sometimes trying to hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability that white folks don't hold to themselves. And I'll give you a little personal story, right? In a way that keeps me in a safe context. But I know of a person who had a relative in their family who was wanted by the police, right? Okay. And wanted for a non-violent crime. Basically a crime that did not include any type of aggression or anything else, but wanted nonetheless. And the grandmother said, "Tell that boy to go turn himself in," right? And the father said, wink, wink, "White folks don't turn their children in. They send them to France. They send them to countries without extradition. They don't turn their children in. They put a lawyer out there and they say, let's work out a deal. Let's work out a plan." Sam Bankman-Fried. I did a lot on this guy. Sam Bankman-Fried, the young little Jewish boy who stole all that money in crypto. Him and his father and mother stole all that money in crypto, paid off government officials, paid off everybody. Sam Bankman-Fried. They didn't just say, "Sam Bankman-Fried, go turn yourself in." This guy had a long process before he was even extradited, right? They put lawyers in front of this situation. White people don't turn their people in. We say, "Oh, well, if you did the crime, you got to do the time," and we're quick to be slave catchers and bring our own and say, "Well, we don't agree with them breaking the law in here." No, sir, no, sir. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. I'm glad you're an upstanding citizen. But at the end of the day, these laws that you try to follow, they were not created for your benefit. They were not created for your health. They were not created for your even protection. They were created for the protection of other individuals. And so even though it is all of our collective civic responsibility to be law-abiding citizens, to teach our affiliates and those connected to us to be law-abiding, to be conscientious about the law, let's understand that the law, which is supposed to be blind, right? She's supposed to be blind. She's supposed to be weighing the balances. That law pokes down the blindfold, says, "Oh, that's a black boy. That's a black child. That's a black man." There's different the scales. That's why the Bible says that God hates an unbalanced or a scale that you rig, a rigged scale. He hates it. He hates it, right? And it's not because simply that God was looking at ancient levels of value or evaluating currency. It's a principle.
Indeed.
That the scales of justice, the scales of equity, the scales of hegemony, the scales of fairness for all people should be even. But for us, it is not. This is why white people are sitting there saying, how come those blacks are so happy that they beat up a bunch of old white people? Because we've been kicked in the head for so long, because the scales have been so unbalanced for so long. The scales of time
have been tipped like this. And with every striking blow, it felt like, all right, we're getting a little more even. We're catching up a little bit. We getting that, like, Jadakiss, and that's something I want to say as well, because I'm an artist. I'm going to be putting out music very soon. I haven't done it yet, but I've put a lot of energy into it, so you all will be hearing about it. But Jadakiss has this line. He said, "Two wrongs don't make the right, but it makes us even."
Absolutely. I just saw Jadakiss the other day. I went to an event that Jadakiss was at just the other day. He came to Toronto. Funny story. He was supposed to do 2 songs. He said, "Man, I can't come out here and do 2 songs." And he came out. He sung a bunch of songs. He actually did. I think he did a DMX song too, because I think DMX was really close with him. You might know that.
Yeah, they were on the same record label.
Right. And the funny part was, for me, you know, people don't know Toronto that well, but we have some serious brothers out here too. So these guys were so excited about Jadakiss's song that they were banging the wall. Bam, bam, bam! Like they were banging the wall when a banger came on, and they were banging the wall so hard it sounded like a gunshot. And to the point where brothers were like, "Oh, what the hell?" And as Jada heard that, he was like, "Okay," and he ducked off the stage. But it wasn't that kind of party, Jada. We weren't going to hurt you in Toronto, brother. But it's interesting that you.
I believe it. That's interesting, because I heard you a couple weeks ago bring up Caravana, and I think that's maybe what he was up there for.
Yeah, he was up there for Caravana. He performed at 2 different places.
I have a passport. I haven't stamped it yet. I'm totally okay with going to Toronto for that next year. That would be like a goal of mine. But yeah, Jadakiss actually, and this is a deeper culture thing, because one of the things that I really want to make a goal and a mission of mine is advocating for our youth, particularly those who are artists and entertainers, because a lot of times they kind of get dismissed because they are artists or entertainers, but we have a long, rich tradition and history of people within our entertainment community being advocates and being activists. So I think that's a really cool thing that we have the ability to do. A big part of my desire to impact the community is because of hip-hop music. When I wasn't able to relate to the formal schooling system, I had rappers who spoke to me about different ideas, from a Lupe Fiasco, who's more traditionally intellectual and bookish, but Jay-Z was teaching me about being an entrepreneur and introduced me to the concept that I could have my own, like being self-contained, and I can do that with my friends and make it a viable thing. My parents didn't teach me that, and I love my parents. I adore them. I honor them. They didn't teach me that, though. They were employees. They had jobs. My father was a union painter. I eventually was a union painter. So, like, having these ideas impacted a whole generation. My cousins had their own businesses because it became cool we can have our own. We can start our own thing. So it reintroduced us to that concept. But Jadakiss has a company with his father and his son, a coffee company, and they have their own independent coffee, and they grow it, and they're responsible for it. They brand it, and it's a beautiful thing. So even within some of these things that maybe get looked at as uncouth, you know, gangster rap is constantly scrutinized. But again, I have some pushback for that.
But let's have that conversation. Let's segue to that conversation from the riverboat. And this is my question. I let you finish. Is real rap exist anymore? Or in order to be a rapper, do you have to basically plug into the institution that has been created to cause Black people to follow something that we shouldn't be followed? Does real hip hop, the hip hop that my generation created, right? Rhythmical African poetry is what rap meant. Rhythmical African poetry, rap. Does that still exist? The conscious, nonviolent movement that we created in the 80s, late 70s, 80s, is that what rap is now?
I will say, to answer it shortly, quickly, absolutely yes. You kind of have to know where to look for it, where to find it. It's not necessarily what's going to be largely promoted to you in the mainstream, although there are examples of that. You do have your J. Cole's, you do have your Kendrick Lamar's who, get ample attention, and rightfully so, because they're very talented and they execute their craft very well. I think hip hop music, as it was once described, as kind of the CNN of the hood. It's something that we create, and particularly as Black men, because we have a special kind of attack against us because we're directly, diametrically opposed to the white cisgender patriarchy. They don't see women as threats the same way they see us. We walk in and it's a little more intimidating. So we get villainized, but our ability to tell our stories I should say not came, but was continued through hip hop, because it didn't start with hip hop.
Your volume went down drastically. Your volume went down drastically just a second ago. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. I can hear you, but your volume went down. But just continue. We can still hear you.
Okay. So I guess
better.
Hip hop is a continuation of Black American art forms. And one great line that I heard in a documentary that Ice-T produced called The Art of Rap, that Lord Jamar said, he said, hip hop didn't invent anything, but it reinvented everything. So we take from everywhere and we pull it in, and we take our stories and we create words and slang around it. We take other influences and we chop it up and we sample. And even that was an example of resourcefulness. It was, all right, well, they're taking music out of the schools. They're taking the trays out of the schools. So we took the one thing in the household that still made music, which was the record player, and turned that into an instrument. So it's still a continuation of our resourcefulness. And you just see it now, the youth using the tools that they have available to them. And in every generation, you're going to have your microwave people who just see it as a quick opportunity to do something, and that's always going to exist. It always has existed. But you have those people who are true to a craft, who are truly looking to innovate, who are truly looking to tell a story. And one of the funny things, I got a million quotes about rap music because I grew up with it and I just love it and have a passion for it. But music generally, Lupe Fiasco has this line. He says, "It's funny how I'm only sick if you never catch a thing," which is a double entendre, which is to say sick meaning cool. Like someone might go, "Oh, that's sick," or "That's awesome." Like, I'm only sick if you never catch a thing. If I'm only going over your head, if I'm only saying these things that are super witty and you have to listen to 2, 3, 4 times and you don't hear it until down the line, right? Which is really a continuation of our cultural history. When we were escaping from slavery, we did it through song, we did it through dance, we did it through hairstyles, we did it through capoeira, we did these kind of things, and that still exists in hip hop. So on a surface level, a lot of it does look banal, it looks mundane, it looks maybe silly or off-putting, but when you dig into it and you maybe get refamiliarized with the slang and the culture, because it's a youthful game to an extent, so it changes every few seasons. So you have to kind of get updated and refresher courses, but it's still the same energy of young people trying to tell a story and being embraced and sometimes encouraged to not do the best things, because there's a yin and yang to everything. And that's fair.
But what if you're telling a story that makes me hate you and makes me hate me and makes me hate, if the story is only, if the theme of every story, like I hate horror movies. I don't like horror movies. We're going to go be here for 15 more minutes. Everybody, we're going to get 12, 15, we're done. If I hate horror movies, right? Because I don't want to see people killing and I just don't like it all the time. I'm not really a horror guy. But to me, as much as hip hop artists can become ambassadors, can demonstrate an art form, can generate independent wealth per se. I'm talking about the Master P's of the world, right? I'm talking about these real moguls who go out here and are actually innovative. But if you're selling me something that makes me poisonous to my brother,
Mhm.
then have you actually created or recreated something, as the gentleman, as the quote that you mentioned said, or are you a unknowing ambassador of my own oppression via white supremacy? If white
Absolutely.
supremacy's agenda is to attack, commit genocide, whether it be financial, economic, or actual genocide, and I can take my hands off it. White people can say, "Let's kill blacks, but let's take our hands off it." Where will we put it? Where will we hide it? And if the answer is hide it in hip hop, hide it in certain artists' lyrics, hide it in a culture that causes them to not produce quality individuals in their own community, then is hip hop an ambassador for the black community, or is it an ambassador for the destruction of the black community? And how do we know the difference?
Okay. Great question. Very insightful, and I'd say you're absolutely right. I gotta answer it with another quote. Mos
Mm-hmm.
Def, who his debut solo album was called Black on Both Sides. And the first track, opening track, was called Fear Not of Man. And he gives a soliloquy on hip hop because people respected him as an artist and as a lyricist. So they would ask him, like, hey, Mos Def, because this has been a continuing question for as long as hip hop has been a thing. Where's hip hop going? What's the state of the culture? How is it going to transform? And he said, hip hop isn't some monster off in the hills hiding from the people. Hip hop is us. It's a reflection of the people. So wherever we're going is where hip hop is going. So hip hop ultimately can be used as a conduit for negativity, absolutely. But we have to ask ourselves, did hip hop invent it, or are they just being CNN and reporting it in a way that is because it's personalized, because it's a confident culture, because it's using mantras and melodies, and ultimately a lot of people who are afflicted by the conditions that they talk about are looking to change them. So you talk about it in a way that maybe isn't not productive, ultimately harmful. But even with that, I'm just able to listen with grace because I understand when you have people who have gone through what we've gone through continually, generation after generation, and ultimately you don't have that continuity. Because I know I grew up listening to all of rap music. I didn't go sell crack. I had a father who told me totally unacceptable, wouldn't have been a thing. And I understand that. I was blessed to be in a position where that decision was kind of made for me. But for those who didn't have that decision made for them, you are a lot more susceptible to maybe falling prey to some of these things. Or
but your story won't be put out there. We rather promote the guy who sold crack than promote the guy who said, I didn't have to sell crack. Well, doggone it. Where's the intrigue in that? We want the crack guy. Where's the guy who sold crack? Let's put him on.
We have our examples. And also one of the beauties of it is a reason why I fell in love with the Jay-Z. Bun B kind of explained it like the B side of the game.
Right.
The reason why we validated it with our experience, because it wasn't like, well, we're just putting black people on the cover and it has no authenticity to it. We said this is legitimate because they talked about the bad side. Yeah, you're going to have some days where you glorify negativity. We all, regardless of background, have some days where we like some toxic things. It's in all of us in some capacity. And so you see guys blowing money when they could have put someone through college. You see people vengeful and ultimately creating harm within the community, but you understand because they talk about both sides. I lost a family member. They're dealing with their trauma, the trauma that we can all relate to on some level because of our shared experience. So the whole story. Now, sometimes it only gets isolated because you're not going to put the whole story out as a single necessarily. When we talk about commodifying something and getting something that's going to be catchy to people and people are excited to listen to, most people aren't excited to listen to the downtrodden. It's just an unfortunate truth. If you're down, like Chris Rock said about the person who ask for help pushing their car versus the person who's already pushing their car. When I say, hey, I'm in the hood, we got the worst of the worst, but I'm making it out some way or another, we find it to be inspiring.
Yeah, those are
And
those are inspiring, and I understand that. It seems like those are the guys. They come out of a scenario where people are like, "No, you don't know where these guys came out of. They've inspired us and whatnot." But not everybody shares that narrative, and it's the
indeed,
hard part is that if you keep only pushing that demographic, then how do other people resonate? Like if I let's say I'm a guy who's got straight A's. I grew up in a middle class community. I'm a black person. I want to go to university. But now I want to be a hip hop artist, and the label says, well, you know, you don't have enough edge. You know, you need to get shot, or you need to have a story. You need to have a back. And now that guy is a ridicule. He's not. Oh, this guy's not hard. He's not street. He's not real. And you know what? Guess who that guy is? That guy's Drake. That
and
guy's
we
Drake.
see how successful he's been, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel you. I totally hear what you're saying. I guess I'd counter it with, it's like there's a little bit of room for everything. You might not be the Drake, or maybe you had to wait to a certain generation to be a Drake. But I'm from Chicago, right? We have drill rappers. We have Chief Keef. We have Lil Durk. People who can't come home because of the things they've been involved with in the violence. But we also have Kanye West, who made it cool to talk about your feelings. And part of the reason we're speaking right now, because he's still out here saying things that make people uncomfortable. But prior to that, we had Common Sense, Common, the rapper, and that's someone where I can go up and down Stony Island, and oh wow, he's talking about 87th on 87th, and so on and so forth. And oddly enough, he had this song that was called by The Source at one point the greatest song in rap history, I Used to Love Her, where he personifies hip hop as if it's a person, it's a woman. And if we think about it in that context, people go through changes, right? So hip hop in the 90s was in the club and so forth. But what do people do? They reproduce. They, you know, have their lineage. So maybe hip hop in the sense that it was in the 80s and 90s isn't the one out in the club, because what 50, 60-year-old person is just out in the club. But they have kids, they have nephews.
They're still out.
Well, some of them, yeah, because y'all get busy, y'all keep
too many of them, but they're still out in the club. In Toronto, those 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, they're still in the doggone club, all of them. Right.
And in some sense, you still hear some elements of hip hop in the club. But what you see more likely is that person's children. The person who's in the club in the 80s and 90s, they have children, cousins, nieces, nephews. And what you see is the progression of hip hop. It's not exactly hip hop, but it's related. It looks like it from a distance, it looks pretty similar, but it has its own unique flair, which it deserves to have, because we don't have to necessarily be our parents, but we should honor those that came before us and take what we can from them. So you might not see exactly hip hop like you saw in 1993, but you see something closely related to it and influenced by it for sure. And
but it's to me, man, it's that stripper cult. Like I'm seeing like a hip hop guy in the 80s. He's not going to be in the club. He's not going to be this whole making it rain, and well, look what it produced. I'm a killer right here as far as what I'm going to say on it. But to me, the modern hip hop has produced, even in our women, like it's made hoe culture the it culture for women, right? Getting your body done, getting money, having N-words give you money, you know, making sure that those N-words do right by you, you know, giving black girls, young black girls, a active, dominant role in their sexual presentation, right? Where they're the dominant, they're the alpha, they're the object of the relationship. It's these things were produced by culture. Culture is produced by the art forms that the culture enjoys, and those art forms, this is the key, are pushed on culture by individuals not even in the culture, but say, I can make money off this. Do they have a larger agenda to say this is perfect? They'll keep them in a particular place where we want them. All these things, because it trickles down to, in my opinion, it trickles down to what happens at ground level. When you do something at the federal level, at the top, what happens at ground level? And to me, hip hop at the ground level used to be, we're not going to fight, we're not going to gang bang, we're going to figure out ways to not do this. But that was the old hip hop. The new hip hop is, we're going to get money, we're going to sell our body, we're going to buy chicks, we're going to get money, like we're going to kill each other, we're going to kill somebody who disrespects me. And it has become something very, very different, to the point where you have a dog, you have a loyal dog that protects the house, but now the dog is biting the family. The dog is attacking people that it's grown up with, and you look and you say, "Wow, man, do I got to put this dog down? What happened to my dog? Is it rabid? Did somebody train my dog to not like me?" That's kind of how I see it a little bit.
Indeed. So I guess the only thing I'd say is all of the negative parts have some level of truth to them. You're not making these things up. I just say there's definitely a yin and yang relationship. And one side, I think maybe it should be my personal goal, is your 30-something-year-old now friend and collaborator to expose you to some of the stuff that, because there's so much positive. Again, just being in Chicago, we have both extremes, right? You have the poster children for what is seen as negative, violent rap and drill music. But again, you have Kanye, you have Common, you have Chance the Rapper, who raps about being married and God and these kind of things. And so there are both sides of it. Both sides do exist. So sometimes it's just, you kind of have to be in it to be aware of it. I kind of came up in the poetry scene. I came up in the spoken word poetry scene because I saw people being grassroots and doing their own thing. And it immediately it saved my life. My best friends, like some of my best friends now, are from the art scene. And from a talent level, it was better. Like, as someone who appreciated lyricism, because I'm still cut from that cloth of, like, we would be in middle school arguing about who was the best, whether it was Jay-Z, whether it was 50 Cent, whether it was whoever, because that's still part of it. And these kids still have these conversations. It's just that maybe how they judge this is a little bit different. But all of these elements that were in the DNA of hip hop, they haven't gone away. Those, we still have dominant genes. It's just that it's kind of like you gotta be in and around it to know it, because again, it's like the youth, it changes so quickly. They're on to something new, and they naturally want to be rebellious. So that's part of it too.
So let's do this as we close. I'll get we got till 12:15 here. You got 2 minutes. I'm gonna close in the first minute. Give me a bar. No, you ain't allowed to cuss though. Give me a bar, man. Give me a poem. Give me a bar. Give me something. This is your Kodak moment, man.
Okay. This music is a gift from the heavens above, but it seems so many rappers got a problem spreading the love. That's cool. I got a little story. I'm going to tell it because we got so many narratives about the selling of drugs, about what you smoke, about what you drink, about what you wear to the club. And I'm not the one that's trying to tell you to stop having your fun, because I still be passing Dutches, so I can't be passing judgment, yo. I'm just saying every now and then switch up the subject. So here goes nothing. That's exactly where I came from. But I grew just like the trees my forefathers would hang from. This music has evolved from Negro spirituals to slaves, son. Made its way to corners that their descendants were slain from. Now it's international. That's so inspirational. All this opportunity. Why are we so confrontational? Negative mentality. Unfortunate reality that we equate our work to our possessions and our salary. That's simply a fallacy, because everyone is handmade, and inside of God, material things are man-made. So I don't really care about how many bucks that man paid, what kind of car he drives, or even what sport that man played, how many lives that man saved, how many hearts did he touch, because we're a nation of people that's in the dark pretty much. And I'm far from perfect. I ain't always got my head right. But while I open curtains on my show, I hope I shed light. God is the Father, so I am the Son. That means if truth is the light, well, I am the Son. You put the two of them together, and I am the sum. It's just simple mathematics, y'all. I am the one.
Hey, come on!
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Joseph, bro.
There's a lot where that came from.
On this field.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm yin and yang. I got a lot. I talk about a lot, and it's honest, it's transparent, but it's in the sense of being relatable. Because another thing that gets left out is a lot of times when we're talking about these things that are deemed negative, it pulls people in and it makes it relatable. Not so much that you want to do it, but you feel like someone understands and you're advocating, because the rest of the world doesn't know this pain. They don't know what we go through. So
the
to
thing
hear
is,
someone
Joe,
else talk about it,
it's true.
helps.
And you got a responsibility now to be the Messiah to bring them out of the pain, man. So I
Indeed.
appreciate you. I ain't giving them no more. That's it.
Likewise.
This is the
Thank
real
you so much.
spiel. Herman Joseph Rome. HJR, baby. Shot Town Zone.
My artist friends call me H2O.
H2O? Okay.
Yes.
Listen, we're going to come back. We're going to figure out some stuff. I like him as a co-host, and we're going to figure out topics. And he brings a whole new feel to the spiel. Listen, we might need to just keep doing this. So let us know. But I appreciate. Look, a lot of comments out here. You got Tanya giving hearts, and
thank you all.
Yep. They giving it up to you, man. They're giving it up to you, big time.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody. This has been the real spiel. The river. We started with the riverboat, and we got all the way to hip hop. And I appreciate my brother here, young brother in the cut, doing big things in this future. Great mind, and I just appreciate everybody who's been on the spiel. To all the Cyclops in the building, if you see this, share, subscribe. Let's make this platform bigger. Let's do bigger things. Let's connect our networks. This is not a one-man show. It's never been a one-man show. This show has always been for the people, and now by the people and to the people. So God bless everybody. We'll see everybody soon. And you were talking a lot about these YouTube Hebrew hip hop artists. Go check that out. I don't know any of them, but y'all can maybe drop a couple of links and let us know who these guys are. But right now,
that's what we're here for.
That's right. And right now we got Herman Joseph, H2O. Let's just go H2O in the.
Yeah, this is a lot smoother off the tongue. Right?
Okay, bless you, man. We're going to catch up and we'll figure it out again. Miss Ann, thank you. And everybody else, thank you. Thank you for all the donations. God bless everybody. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. I'm going to call you privately, bro. So just get off this and we'll talk.
Okay.
Okay, bye.